Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that you won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show. With your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino. How be ye?
We are just loving life.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and we got to thank the listeners, man.
Yes, listeners.
You guys are
Every
doing
last
it.
one of you. Thank you.
And, of course, we're going to beg for you to keep telling your friends.
Yes, please.
Turn this thing on.
Tell two friends.
Tell, yes. And here's the thing.
Make sure they tell two more.
Hold them down and make them download this show. Because we've really got some plans, but we cannot move forward on the other plans until we get these numbers up to where they need to be.
Right. So,
and I know it sounds weird, but it's true.
It is. It is.
This is not a. It's free to you. It costs us a little bit. We love doing it. We want to do more.
We do want to do more.
Yes,
absolutely.
So, go ahead. Sorry.
Don't forget the other one that we do.
Oh yes, This Week in Music.
That's right.
You got to check that out. I've been that is now getting posted out on a daily basis, like Instagram and all.
Cool.
So you guys can check it out from there. And of course, if you can, and we would love you to, go to ampsandaxescast.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can get all the social media.
That's right.
And when you go to iTunes, you want to give us how many?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5
stars.
That's right. Go big or go home.
That's it.
But actually, just go big. We don't care if you don't like us or not.
Go big, then go home.
Give it a big, yeah. And, look, everything is on the page.
Yes.
And underneath the 2 episodes is our good buddy from up north.
Jason Taditas.
He gives us...
Quick lick.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, does he.
He wicks them quick.
Yes.
Clicks them wick. Wicks them lick. He licks them quick. He's fast.
He's really fast.
That's right.
And...
But it's so cool because you get the tab thing and you get the backing tracks and it's like
you're getting a free guitar lesson.
You are.
Yeah.
That's an expensive lesson you get for free.
Yeah, from a great artist and a great guy, and throw him the love. And then of course there's a banner there for Amazon. Now look, Christmas, it's like here. If you go to the hardware store, it's there.
It's there, right?
Go anywhere. Go to Walmart.
When this comes out, you probably still have to buy a turkey, so maybe you get the turkey through there. But, otherwise, it's already Christmas everywhere.
Actually, they shoot it out of a cannon.
That's right. Well,
like they do to jet engines. They just shoot it at your house.
Well, it's going to be, drone shipped.
Yeah. And then they're going to drop a frozen turkey that weighs about 16 pounds on your head.
There you go.
It's a win-win, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Not for the turkey.
So definitely check out all that stuff. Throw the love this way because you guys are it. You guys are the thing that can advertise this show for us.
That's right.
I mean, we can do all the social media, which we do. Mm-hmm. But if we don't get that turnover from you guys, telling a friend, telling your neighbors, telling your loved ones.
That's right.
Grab somebody by the throat and choke them out and just program their phone to
If you love them, why wouldn't you tell them?
Exactly. And look, we get a little bit, and me and Jeff talked about this, we get a little bit sometimes a little too technical with the stuff. We're going to keep those, but we're going to try to, bring it back a little bit. So that way you guys don't get in the weeds as much as we have been in the past.
More entertaining for more people.
Yeah. When we start talking about, the voltage across a grid. And stuff like that, it gets a little crazy.
Yeah. we don't do that too often. But
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, before we bring the guest of the week out, I just have to say it's been a pretty rough RIP time lately.
Oh. Once again.
Jesus, man.
They say, oh, yeah, it always happens in threes. And I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, sometimes 4s and 5s.
I got 4 on the list right now.
There you go.
We have to give, large RIPs out to, my God, Leonard Cohen.
Yeah.
Mose Allison. Leon Russell. Jesus.
Yeah, and I have to apologize for Leon Russell. And it was up. It was up for 10 minutes, and I pulled it down. And I'm a big man because I can admit my faults.
Okay.
So I was looking up Leon's last name. I wanted to make sure there was enough that I was spelling it correctly.
Okay. It's good to do research.
Somehow, this guy named Simmons came up. Not Russell Simmons. I'm sorry, Russell. Yeah, it was Russell Simmons. I put that in there.
Okay.
I put that in there.
Oh.
And I was like, and then, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, God. And I pulled it down as quick as I put it up. So if anybody saw
Leon
that,
Russell
whoops.
Simmons passed? What?
Yeah, exactly.
And Victor Bailey, bass player extraordinaire.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was,
Oh, my God. I didn't even know
I
that.
think, bass player Earth, Wind, and Fire, I
Yeah.
believe, early on. But did you know that he replaced Jaco in Weather Report?
Whoa.
That's how good he was.
Oh,
that's some good there. And,
Yeah, man.
Yeah. It's been a tough week or so. So we wish them all a safe trip onward.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's God, when we do This Week in Music, it's every one of them has, another guy that, and it's like, well, what do you say? It's just, unfortunately, it's a part of our
all
life.
All you can say is thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Thanks for making our lives musically better.
Yep.
That's all you can do.
Absolutely.
So we have another musician on today. Funny thing. But he is, speaking of Victor Bailey, he's in Victor Bailey's crew. He's another bass player. And there's there doesn't seem to be enough bass players out there, and you'll probably find out because of the roster that this guy has here that he's played with. Bass players are in demand.
Yeah.
So
if you're a frustrated guitar player and you got some rhythm, you may want to think about it.
Drop 2 strings and get yourself employed. So we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna be right back with bass player for currently. Plenty Heavy and Soul Sign, which is his band, but also still going to go out with Tony MacAlpine.
Yep.
And God, I'm probably forgetting people.
The Dio.
The Dio Disciples.
Yes.
And it's like, so we're gonna take a break and come back with heavily working bass player Bjorn Englen. So stay tuned.
Hey, this is Bill Toms from Bill Toms and Hard Rain from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and you're listening to Amps and Axes.
All right, and we are back as promised, as always, because we promise and we keep our promises.
That's right.
With our guest of the week, currently with Plenty Heavy and maybe still Soul Sign and so many other heavy players.
Yes.
Welcome, bassist extraordinaire, Mr. Bjorn Englen. Bjorn, how are you?
Good. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great, man.
Yeah,
doing
man.
great. Well, we have you on with us, so
Awesome.
it's a great day.
So it was funny.
Nice.
I talked to Greg Mara.
I got
to make sure I put
straighten
the
out
last
the Gregs,
name.
man. Straighten out the Gregs.
And I was talking to Greg, and I said, I saw the credentials of your bass player. I was like, hey, do you think you'd want to come on and talk to us? He's like, yeah, let me see. And
Cool.
here we are, man. And thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
Because we got a ton
My
of questions.
Oh, good. Well,
At least I do.
you got some questions, and but I'm going to do what I do.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to, like always, take our guest in the Wayback Machine and find out where Mr. Bjorn Englen was born and raised, and how you got into this crazy, wonderful world of music, man. So give us a little history.
Well, I was born in Sweden and grew up there, and I was playing a lot of sports as a kid. And when I was about 7 years old, 6 years old even, maybe even younger than that, I think, came across a band called Kiss, and I think that's a band that a lot of people talk about as like one of the first that kind of,
Influenced.
Or gives you the attention of like, wow, here's a band, and I think part of it was the image, but they had really good songs, and they were not just a rock band; they were like a pop band too. So they,
Sure.
Really melodic music and stuff like that, and entertaining. So it was one of those. And years went by, and I kept playing sports, and there was music schools around, but it wasn't like any of the modern music schools. They were like about 40, 50 years behind where, hey, you want to play flute? Hey, you want to play the violin? And, those might be instruments that are cool for people when they get older, but when you're 10 years old, that's not very cool. So
10 years old and listening to Kiss.
Exactly. That was really cool. So
I don't hear a flute in Kiss. Is there a flute in there?
Yeah, exactly. So, you'd be surprised, maybe.
Maybe.
There might be in some of the songs. I don't know. They got some orchestration in some of those.
You're gonna have to give a
tunes,
really close listen to Beth.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah. There's some of those that have a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, I mean. So I never really got into playing music super early, and in my family, they noodled around a little bit on keyboards and guitar and stuff like that, but there wasn't any heavy musical stuff going on. So when I was about 12, 13, I was, I would say when I was younger, I was listening to a lot of top 40 music that was going around the radio and stuff like that. And my older brother would buy singles, and we'd sit and listen to music. But there was really no rock music on the radio or classic rock stations. And I mean, there was like an hour a week of hard rock and metal, and that was it. So
now this was still in your hometown.
That was in Sweden, period, and. So there wasn't like that influence or that stuff that you'd pick up and listen to and stuff like that. So, but when I got older, like 12, 13, I mean, I had a lot of friends that were listening to a lot of, all the AC/DC and Judas Priest and Motley Crue and Iron Maiden and all that stuff. So that's where that kind of came in. And I had friends that were jamming around the neighborhood, and, friends that started playing guitar and drums, and so I started getting exposed to that, and kind of really was like, wow, this is really cool. And a friend of mine that I grew up with, he was 3 years older than me. He had a punk band across the street, and they played in the garage, and they were all sort of friends of mine. I mean, I knew him more than the other guys, but the bass player, they weren't great players or anything, but I was just amazed of like how cool the bass sounded. I was like, wow, man, you're hitting one note and it's that big. And I was like, wow, I couldn't really, I was watching him. I couldn't really figure out really what he was doing. I was like, what, is he really just pressing one note? I was like amazed. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to play bass. Nobody's playing bass. All my friends were playing drums and guitar. And I was like, you know what? There needs to be a bass player, and I thought the bass players in all these bands I was listening to were equally as cool as all the people that were guitar heroes or trying to be guitar heroes. No offense to anyone, but I didn't quite get it. So I was like, well, I'm going to play bass, and that was it. I never started on guitar like a lot of people. I just went straight to bass, and still kind of play like a guitar player. So just imagine if I started on guitar, I'd be totally screwed. So
that was a smart move.
So
going
at least
to bass,
I had
though,
the initial approach of a bass player, and I think that's kind of important, because I hear all these people that a lot of great guitar players can play bass, and I was like, I've even grown up, I'd watch all these shredding guitar players, try my bass and play, and I was like, wow, they're playing really fast, whatever. But I was like, they still sounded like a guitar player. It's hard for a guitar player to have a bass player approach, I think, and I don't blame them, because you listen to music differently and you play music differently. So, but that was sort of how I got started. And at school, in our junior high school, there was an hour a week of like free activities or whatever they called it, and then you could pick cooking or sewing or music, and the guys that were at that was part of the school sort of thing, and they were really kind of cool in my eyes because they were rockers, you know. They weren't necessarily metalheads, but they were in tune to all this Led Zeppelin and all the stuff. So that's how I first picked up the bass, and they had a bass there, and it was I can't remember what the brand was, but it was a pretty decent bass, and the guy taught me how to play 12-bar blues, and I was stoked. I thought it was like, wow, this is cool. And it's still, when I've been teaching all these years, is one of the first things I always teach people is the 12-bar blues, and I keep telling people this is a good way to start, and if you know how to play the blues, you kind of get a good grip on you know how to change chord progressions and change chords in a chord progression and move around and create walking bass lines and so forth. So that was sort of interesting. And I remember I borrowed this bass from them, and they said, you can take it home. And I was like, are you sure? Not that they should be afraid that I would steal it or anything like that, but I was just like, wow, that's really nice. I could, so I got to bring it home for a couple of days, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I didn't know quite what to do with it when I brought it home, but I didn't know how to play, but I played what I knew, and I was like, this is it, man. I got to get my own. So I have to get my own bass. So I told my parents, and they got me a bass through mail order. And I still have it actually hanging on the wall, and I took it out of the case after 20 years, and I hung it on the wall again. So it's I repainted it about 4 times and scalloped the fretboard and all kinds of stuff too. It's
on the bass,
pretty
really?
interesting piece of work.
Wow!
But I still had the bass. I still have it. Yeah. So.
And what manufacturer? What is it?
It is a Court.
Oh, a Court.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and they're still around actually.
Oh, yeah.
Funny enough, they made Gene Simmons' signature model bass. Probably it's got to be at least 10 years ago, something like that.
Yep.
So
I remember that.
Who else did they have as Matt Guitar Murphy at one point was a Court guitar endorser.
It's so funny because me and Jeff, when you said Kiss, we kind of looked at each other and laughed because there are these distinct lines, and it was the Beatles. Usually,
like generations of influence.
Yes.
There are hard lines.
Yeah, it was the Beatles, and then the next one we have found through all the interviews we've done, Kiss was the second one.
Absolutely,
Isn't that
because
crazy?
they were really worldwide,
and they were
had
not
a
just
very
a rock,
big worldwide influence,
and they were not just a rock and roll band, like you said. They had a pop side to them.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that theatrical thing.
And I was going to say, and a theatrical side.
Yeah. So
and I think people, the listener or the person picking up the instrument, learning the songs, I just, when you're influenced by a band, I think it's a lot of times because it's real. You can feel when something's real, and it comes across in the music how hard the bands worked and what they did to get to where they are. And you listen to the Beatles with the way they played and sang together, the harmonies.
God,
I mean. For example, it's just incredible. So
and
that was groundbreaking in rock and roll at that time.
Remember, we do another show called This Week in Music, and one of the things that we were talking about on yesterday's show was that in 1956 they were out
John,
there.
Paul, and George.
Yeah, were out there doing their thing.
Yeah,
and it's like,
wow,
holy crap! You know how many years that was before they actually got signed? Before and then of course Kiss. There was a story about Kiss, and it's out there on a documentary. It wasn't, they started in 1970, right? Okay. And Casablanca Records, these guys believed in this band. This was the band, right? Mm-hmm. By 1975, they did Kiss Alive. Mm-hmm. And that was the album that really propelled them. That's what got them going, was this double album set, right? From a band that was basically unknown at the time. Mm-hmm.
Right.
The guy that ran Casablanca, he had worn his suit to where he had holes in the suit because he couldn't afford anything.
Another suit.
He literally had put every dime into this band, and now look at him.
Wow.
Yeah,
they're $1 billion industry.
I hope he is too. I hope he bought another suit.
Oh, those guys thrive like nobody's business. They were talking about the
I just started reading
years.
the book by Gene Simmons called Me, the Incorporated, or something like that.
Sure.
I forget the title. It's not in front of me right now, but I'm about halfway into it. But you just realize that one of the big reasons why they got to where they were or are is, his both of them's business mind, and understanding, and he's going into detail about how he started to understand early on how to make money and how to not spend money on unnecessary stuff, and how that's really important, and he was talking about all that, and he's the beginning of the book is not just talking about Kiss, he's just talking about period, his life and what he was doing and going to school and going to university and rehearsing with the band late at night and sleeping 4 or 5 hours and then get back up on the train and commuting 2 hours back into the city again and stuff like that. And, people don't realize how much work people put into what they're doing in their craft and to get to where they are now. They don't see the history. They just see, oh, wow, here's this new band, and and I don't think somebody who's never been in a band or done that, I don't think they have any idea of what's behind it, really.
Well, I think that pertains to a lot of things nowadays because we are living in the age of instant gratification.
Oh.
And if it doesn't happen like right now, it's like, well, I'm not going to put in any more effort.
Yep.
To that. It didn't happen. And that's not the way that's not the way life works.
And bands just bands are like, you practice 10,000 hours. You're out there and you're busting your ass for 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of waiting, and it's a lot of, I hope people show up.
Right. It's a lot of waiting, it's a lot of hoping, it's a lot of luck.
Yeah.
It's
and
right place, right time.
And you do that gig, and you have to do it whether there's 10 people or 1,000 people. You got to do it the exact same way. And if you don't, people can see that.
Oh, for sure.
And when you do that, you're done.
You got to be doing it because you want to do it.
Yeah.
And you can you should be able to close your eyes, and it doesn't matter if there's 2 or 2,000 people in front of you or 20,000 or whatever it is.
Exactly.
You got to do it because you want to do it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, you got to do it for the love of it, and just an example of how how it works today is like the American Idol. I mean, I'm not putting it down because that's you can really find talent, and there's a lot of pressure to people. You're putting people on the spot and all that stuff. But outside of talent, are they counting the amount of hours that people are putting into it, and how much experience they really have, and what they can really do? I mean, what have they proved really? I mean, it's a band that's been on the road for 10 years and then they get signed. I mean, they've really proven themselves, in my opinion. So.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
We agree, man. It's when you hand somebody that, that's why most bullshit. Of them have just disappeared.
Right.
You have a couple, 2, 3 that have done really well.
Right.
But most of them just evaporated. They're like nothing.
And the whole thing is, it's like where once it falls apart, if it falls apart, where do you go from there? You really have no history to fall back on or fall back into. And
if you fall away and somebody comes out and you're still doing that, people are going to go, remember that guy? He was the guy that, and he's washed up now. So now he's playing this club. And
I don't think anybody's washed up if they're still playing and doing what they want to do.
But you know what I mean, though. That's what the general public
perception
would say.
If you're an artist and you're out there doing what you want to do, regardless of at what level, and you're sustaining and you're doing positive things and making great music and making people happy and making yourself happy. What the hell's wrong with that? It doesn't matter what level it is.
Nothing wrong with that.
Doesn't matter.
We know how people are.
Well, and I think how much work, considering how much work is behind it, if you don't have the true love for it, you're not going to have the energy to pull through and go through with all the BS that's involved. I really think that's what people don't always remember.
Sure.
So
right. So did music and the love of music and the desire to do something bring you to the U.S.? Is that how you got to the U.S.? Is that the reason?
I would say mainly, yeah. I came as an exchange student when I was 18 for about 5 weeks. But we, a group of students from Sweden, my hometown, they had a sister city in Minnesota called Duluth, and we went all the way up there, and that was sort of my first taste of America. And we spent a week in New York City, and I was like, well, I want to go back. So about 2 years later, I came back on a trip, on a 5-week trip, and I went all over the United States. I think back then, if you were a student or you were under 25 and you were European, you could buy like a 30-day pass through Delta Airlines, and you could fly unlimited standby.
Wow.
Which back then the planes were never full. So and it was for about $350. So
wow.
That's
so
insane.
me and a
Wow.
buddy of mine flew all the way, all around the United States, and we spent about 4 days in LA, which, I mean, we did a lot in those 4 days. We rented a car and we went everywhere, and we went to all these different clubs and places, and, you know, including the Sunset Strip and all that stuff. And I just loved the city. And so that was part of it was, okay, I love LA. And then people back in Sweden were talking about, you know, hey, I want to go to the Musicians Institute. And so that was something that kind of got my attention too. Hey, you know, I can go there and study music and meet people from all over the world, and I can get a student visa, and I can actually be there for a year and see if I like it. So that was sort of my gate to paradise.
Wow.
So to speak. So
Wow.
So yeah, the love of music was for sure the primary reason, and then of course the weather and loving the city, and you know, just a whole mindset of LA and the United States, of people probably being a little bit more open-minded. You know, the way I grew up was, unfortunately, was, you know, everybody's the same, and don't think you're better than anybody else. And if you told somebody, hey, I'm going to be a rock star, they would laugh at you, and it was just totally different. You know, completely opposite of what you'd see here, and so that was something I felt like I probably had to do in order for me to be happy and do what I love. You know.
I've heard Yngwie say that exact same thing.
That's an interesting, insightful look. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
He did an interview, and he said, yeah, it's, you know, over there it's that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, he was like, I had to go.
Yeah.
And go did he?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was even more extreme for him because he was so different. I mean, I did something that a lot of people did. I'm not going to say that I was like everybody else, but I think that what he did was so extreme as far as, hey, I'm going to play instrumental music and you know, all this stuff, and people are like, what? You know, you can't do that. Like, so that was for him. I think he had to. There was no choice. I mean, I see there was a lot of friends of mine that are around about my same age, you know, like Hammerfall and Flames and all those bands that are now friends of mine, that I wasn't aware of when I was really young, when I was a teenager. But they all stayed in Sweden, and they rehearsed in one band 3 days a week. They never joined other bands and never worked as session players, as far as I know. And although some of those guys did, but later on, but yeah, and they kind of made it that way. But what in the late '80s, early '90s, the scene and the environment just wasn't made for that. There was no labels. There was nothing supporting a hard rock or metal band getting successful, except for one or two bands out of Sweden. They just wouldn't sign any bands. So what happened in the mid '90s? You got all these European labels popping up and kind of opened the door for a lot of those bands. But before I moved, it was just hopeless. And you know, and then I came here, and I came sort of like right after the grunge had kind of like dropped a nuclear bomb on everything, and it was really a nightmare. So I kind of went through a really rough time in the '90s, in many different ways. Although I had a lot of work and I had a lot of fun. I was trying to get a band started and get a band going, and kind of being just a hard rock band. If you weren't like the Flavor of the Week, was just brutal, you know. So.
Oh yeah. Wow. And, you know, Yngwie, when he came over, it was like 83, something like that.
Yeah.
And I saw, so he when he came over, he was in a band with Ron Keel called Steeler. Mm-hmm. And that was short-lived. That was like an L.A. thing. And, you know, he was just turning L.A. on their ear because nobody had ever done what he was doing. And then he joined Alcatraz. Mm-hmm. And Alcatraz had Graham Bonnet from Deep Purple. Or Rainbow. Sorry.
Rainbow.
I always get these two put
Very
together
close.
because, the
Blackmore.
same guy.
Blackmore, right.
And so then he did that, and I saw that open up for Ted Nugent, right?
Wow.
So it was at a local venue here, Meriwether Post, and it's an outdoor venue, and my friend went with me, and we're sitting there. We got there early, so the guy was like, yeah, go ahead, go get your seat. I don't care. So we're sitting under, in the pavilion. We're sitting there, and I see this guy come out, and he's just wearing jeans and a T-shirt. No big deal. Grabs his strat. I'm like, oh, look at the roadie. Just starts wailing like nobody's business, right? And I'm going, holy Christ, what the hell's the opening act going to be like?
Right.
Sure enough, it was Yngwie. And I'd never seen anything like that. Yeah. It was mind-blowing. I was like, what is this? Who is this guy? And then shortly after, he went solo. And then, it was like he was this thing.
Over, right.
And then it literally brought neoclassical style guitar
Absolutely.
to this country.
Right.
They said that Randy was like looking at Randy Rhoads. He was attempting to start to do stuff like that, but he passed away way before he ever even attempted it. But Yngwie came over. He was like, "Here you go."
Here you go. This is how it's done.
Well, he introduced neoclassical guitar music to the world. I think. I mean, he was. I mean, there was nothing like that even where I grew up before he came, and not officially at least. And he totally. Unless you were one of his friends or you grew up like near Stockholm and you saw his band perform up there, which they only did a few times before he left. He didn't really get established really even there. He was so young, and he was sort of like, moved really early on.
Yeah, he was like
to
17?
the United States. But
I think he was like 17, maybe something like that.
19.
19.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's still young.
Yeah.
It is very young. I was 21 when I came, and I thought it was a good age. I mean, if I would have there's a big difference between 19 and 21. As far as what you know and what you can. But I think, although I think the younger you are, the less afraid you are, and you just kind of go with your instinct as opposed to overthinking stuff.
That's very true.
You're like, I can jump that canyon with my bicycle. Not a big deal.
Yeah, of course.
What's going to happen
Right.
if I fall down? I just get back up and go again, right? Yeah.
Easy to think
Exactly.
that-
You don't have that fear,
No.
or
Right.
maybe even you don't know what a failure is going to do to you, and because failures can be kind of rough sometimes.
Sure.
But when you haven't had one, you're not afraid of it, and I think that's a very good thing. As we all say, getting jaded is not a good thing. So,
But
yeah.
I think failure is necessary. We learn a lot from it.
Yeah. To some extent, it's good. Yeah. Sometimes it can be crushing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Painfully crushing. Hopefully not debilitating. Hopefully not
Yes,
debilitating.
Yeah.
So-
I just had a conversation with a couple of friends the other day, and we were talking, and I was saying, like, I don't necessarily believe that good things or bad things are good for you, or bad experiences are good for you. I almost have the opposite belief, that I think that a little bit of bad experiences you can learn from, but if you have too much of it, it can be, like you said, it can be crushing, and it can really bring you down and hold you back, and
Okay,
those kind of things.
I'll concede to that. Yeah, I mean,
Too many.
too many. Yeah, can just like, all right, it's just not worth it anyway.
Yeah.
But obviously, you didn't have too many because you're still going strong. So you came over to do MIT. Did you wind up staying?
I did. I stayed for a couple of months after the school was done, and then I went back to Sweden for I think about 6 weeks or so, and then I came back again, and I was like, that's it, indefinitely, though, and but it was probably in the back of my mind was like, I'm going to probably be there for a while, and then so that was it.
Wow.
So,
Cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and I assume you started, getting together with players and making a living with music. How did it transpire that you got to play with some of the notables that you've played with? How long were you out there doing it before somebody went, hey, you should be with this guy, or you need to play with me, or whatever?
Well, it kind of happened when I came back again to the U.S. I had no job. I had nothing. I had an apartment, and I had a roommate. And I came back. I found out his girlfriend had moved in. I was like, "Oh, really? You live here now?" That was interesting. But no, he's one of my best friends still to this day. So it was all good. But yeah, I had nothing, so I'm not sure. I was just kind of like in the back of my mind, I'll get a gig, you know. It was just like that positive thing in that. And then a friend of mine, my roommate, moved out, and I had a friend of mine came to visit from Sweden. He's like, "Dude, you have to get a job." And I was thinking, like, why? And he's like, "Well, you have to make money." He's like, and then, you know, I was like, yeah, maybe you're right. So I went and got a job at this gym. Like this was like this 24-hour gym. So I would work the graveyard shift at the gym, you know. And sometimes there would be nobody in there. I'd work out and I practice my bass and I do all my stuff. I call up, you know, to pay my bills and do everything. You know, I would call Sweden and, you know, with my calling card, and I would talk to people there, and I, you know, would do everything I needed to do. So when the night was over, I had done everything. I went home, I went to sleep, and I did it all over again the next day. But so I was there for a little while, and a couple of months, and then in the middle of the night, one friend of mine walked in with the LA Weekly and said, "Hey, listen, check it out. Quiet Riot's looking for a bass player." And I was like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." But I remember seeing ads with them where there was like, you know, half of the band was pretty much gone, and there was not a lot of original players left in the band. So I was like, well, I'm not sure what this is. So I looked, and I was like, well, this is the original lineup reuniting, but they're looking for a bass player. So I was like, well, what the heck? I'll send in a demo, whatever. And then Kevin DeBroke called me back, and the singer, and said, "Hey, listen, it sounds really good. She come in for an audition." So I did, and I think they got like 120 tapes, and wow. And when I don't think I found this out till after, but there was about 40 guys that came in to try out, and I don't know how many days they were trying bass players for, but wow. It was only 2 songs that I came in to play, and they asked me pretty much right away, "Hey, you know, it sounds really good. You want to tour with us?" I'm like, sure. And have you ever toured before? And I said, not really, you know. They're like, well, no, don't worry about it. You'll get a hang of it in a couple of days. You know, it's pretty easy. You just kind of, you know, do a lot of traveling and waiting around, and then you play for 90 minutes, and that's about it. I was like, that sounds really good. You know?
Just don't crap on the tour bus.
And that's exactly what they told me before we took off. And you know, Kevin was like, you know, this is the most important rule. You can't do it. And I'm like, are you sure? I thought he was joking. He's like, no. I'm serious. Don't do that.
You gas the whole bus.
It'll be a problem. So.
It'll be a problem. That would be a problem. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So that was pretty funny. But the funny thing was the one of the songs that I was trying out on was a song called "The Bang Your Head," which was on their breakthrough album, Metal Health, which is just sort of the title track. And that was actually outside of the 12-bar blues. That was the very first song I learned on bass guitar. And so that was kind of interesting. And
that's pretty cool.
That was pretty much exactly 10 years before. And it was interesting because I had, you know, like a lot of other people, had a record collection, and I numbered all the records. And for whatever reason, I had numbered Metal Health as number 1. And I, you know, because I needed to have numbers so I knew where to put them. Mm-hmm. And so I'd see that every time I'd go through my records, I would see that cover. And I don't know if that has anything to do with what they call the you know, the secret or whatever, you know, when you keep seeing something, you know. Yeah. But I have more examples of that kind of went through my whole career of the people I played with. It was a lot of that stuff kind of happened that way. And I don't know if it's a subconscious thing or whatever, but that was sort of interesting. So
that is pretty wild.
It's almost like you, not quite, but it's almost like you manifested it. You know?
Yeah.
You know?
You willed it upon yourself.
You willed it. There you go. You willed it.
Yeah. One of those things. And you know, I liked them, but they weren't one of my absolute favorite bands. And maybe because they didn't really last that long as far as, you know, the way that they came out as far as selling 10 million albums, and then the second one kind of didn't sell as much, and then after that it was sort of like a little bit of it became a little bit of a problem. But anyway, so that's kind of like how that got started. So
that's very cool.
Wow.
You know, there's a whole documentary on Quiet Riot.
Quite right.
And it took years to do. And Frankie is the drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And and him and Kevin were like best friends forever. And they were talking about how they didn't care how old they were going to be. They were still going to be doing Mental Health when they were 80. Like, they would come out in walkers, you know.
Right.
Nice.
And then Kevin died.
Yeah.
Right? He passed away. And he was like, what do we do? You know, so they got a guy off of the internet that, that could sing and all. And they show this whole thing. It's a very good documentary. I recommend it if anybody's even a slight fan of that band. It's very compelling.
It's very cool, yeah.
Yeah, and, Kevin was, unfortunately, Kevin was the destruction of that band during those years when, they were huge, and then it was a little bit less. And then he admitted it, that he was like the Dee Snider thing. He had kind of just, punched a hole in the wall for everybody, and just kind of he said a lot of things back in their early days that was like, people were like, nah, we're not going to deal with you.
Kind of self-destructive.
Yeah, for sure. That was sad, and it's kind of like this hypothetical thing, just kind of like with Randy Rhoads too, like what would have happened if that didn't happen? You know, if Kevin wasn't acting like that, what would have happened with the band? Like, it's one of those things that I try not to think too much about. Same thing with Randy Rhoads. Now he happened to be the guy that started Quiet Riot with Kevin, but I got to think about that when you brought up his name earlier. Was like, who knows what would have happened because he was talking about he wanted to get off the road and start and only focus on teaching. And all this stuff, but who really knows? I mean, it's just one of those hypothetical things that I think will, obviously will stay hypothetical, but it's not even worth, analyzing.
Hey, first time I saw Quiet Riot, I was like, whoa! I mean, those guys were on fire. Cool. During the Mental Health album and all, it was like, Carlos is a great guitar player, and he had a big set of shoes to fill. It was Randy Rhoads that he replaced, and he did a really good job. He was it wasn't like one of these shredder guys, but he was a good guitar player. And I
think he was perfect for that band. Yeah, really. Yeah. I mean,
great tone,
his style
too.
and everything, because it wasn't really about shredding. They were more of a song-oriented band. It was more about the stage show, and they were all good players, but it wasn't about that. So I think he was perfect
showboating.
for that.
It was about the songs, right?
Yeah. And the first guy I ever saw play a Washburn guitar.
There you go, Carlos.
How about that?
Oh wow, that's right. He did that for like early on.
Little tiny, like Explorer kind of rip-off looking guitar. Yeah.
So enough about Carlos and Quiet Riot. Where did you go from there?
Oh, where did I go? Well, that was sort of, I did the audition, I think, in October of 1994, and then I met back up with them, and they were starting a new album, so I did some pre-production and stuff like that with them, but they were still pretty tight with Chuck Wright, who was in and out of the band many times, and the documentary that Frankie and his wife produced tells a lot about that, how he kind of was in and out of the band. But he was a big part of their history and stuff like that. So he ended up doing the album. And then they said, hey, we still want you to tour with us and stuff like that. So I did a lot of promos, and we did some photo sessions and stuff like that. And then in March of 95, I went on the road and did a U.S. tour with them. And that was it. And then I left the band, and that was the end of that. And then I was back in Los Angeles, and I started just going. Well, I was doing all sorts of jobs for a few months, but I was, had the attitude of like, well, I'm gonna only because there wasn't a lot of bands that were really doing anything in the style of music I wanted to play. I was more like, well, I'm going to work as a bass player and just be a session guy for a while. So I did that. I did that for a while, for all through the 90s actually, till things started cooking a little bit again, you know. So that was sort of like my bread and butter, just doing sessions and playing in all sorts of bands and a lot of recordings in the studios in Los Angeles when there were still recording studios around. So.
Wow.
But that was fun. That was great, you know, working with different people and then different producers and different environments and stuff like that. I did a lot of just working shows and gigs too with all sorts of bands, and started my own band pretty much right after I got off the road with Quiet Riot. I met up with a friend of mine. We started writing tunes, and we started forming this band Soul Sign that later got put on hold for a long time. He left, and you know, things kind of fell apart a couple of years after that, because we played some shows around town and stuff like that, and then things kind of, I got in a couple of car accidents, like 2 car accidents in 1 week actually. I don't know how I managed to do that, but so the sort of like I started having back problems and things like that, and they kind of threw me out of the loop for a little while, and threw the band out of the loop, and sort of like you know, it wasn't, you know, in the 90s probably in my life period was probably the worst time in my life. Although, you know, I had a lot of good times at the same time. It was rough, and I think just the love of Los Angeles kind of kept me here and just playing music. But I kind of killed the spark of you know, the passion for music sort of started dying. I remember probably about the very late 90s, the early 2000s, I got pretty burned out, and I was playing stuff, but a lot of stuff that I wasn't really enjoying fully. You know, I was learning a lot because I was playing a lot of different styles of music just to survive. You know, I was playing even reggae and Latin music and jazz music and stuff like that.
Wow.
And that was all fun to play, and especially for the bass player, you know, there's a lot of room to play, and you know, and it was a big part of that kind of music. But I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do, and I sort of just kind of died, you know, as far as the passion and stuff like that, and which I said before, I think is so important.
For sure.
And with Soul Sign, we had about 96, 97, we were trying out I think it was like we had a guitar player audition, and we tried 4 different guitar players, and they were all so incredible, we couldn't decide which one to get. They were just the most amazing players, and I remember them still to this day, like all of them, and I'm friends with a couple of them still. And so we ended up getting a friend of mine from Sweden that came to visit, and he was an incredible player and fit the band perfectly, so we ended up getting him in the band. But one of these guys, his name's Dave Bates, is an incredible player, and we stayed friends all these years. And although he didn't get the gig in my band, he called me one day, and I think 2003, and he said, "Hey, I just formed a band with Robin McCauley. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Yeah, hell yeah." So yeah, we met up, and we started recording, and the name of the band was Bleed, and we recorded a whole album and really good songs, kind of heavier, but still, you know, melodic. A lot of it because of Robin and Robin's vocals and all that stuff, and the way he would write his melody lines and stuff like that. So it was really enjoyable. And then Robin said, "Hey, why don't we do some shows as the Robin McCauley band, and we'll do some, you know, MSG stuff and things like that." And we said, "Yeah, that sounds like fun." He said, "Yeah, just until we get the band going and, you know, stuff like that, until we get the album done, we can do some shows." So we did that, and that sort of like made me really enjoy music again. That was like the beginning of a new era for me, you know. So that really sparked things, and nice. We did that for a couple of years, and then after that I started playing with Yngwie, and that sparked new things and led to other things too. So
how did that come about?
Yeah.
Well, I was friends with his drummer for since about 2003, I think. We just sort of like, back in the days of MySpace, I was just kind of like surfing MySpace, and I saw his MySpace page, and then I went to his website. I'm like, who's this guy? I'm like, who's playing with Yngwie now? And, so sort of like sent him an email, said, oh, cool, Swedish musician, and said, hi from another Swede or something like that. And then he's like, well, I'm in Los Angeles right now. Like, why don't we, go grab a cup of coffee or something like that? And we became friends, and we've been friends ever since. And then about 2 years later, he was, he's doing a tour with Yngwie, and it was coming through town, and I went to sound check, and started talking with him and Yngwie, and the bass player at the time was sick, and because Yngwie has like 4-hour sound checks usually.
Oh my God, Jesus.
So, yeah. So the bass player wasn't feeling good. He had a flu or something. So, he put the bass down. I was like, dude, I got to take a break. I'm going to go to the bathroom. And Patrick was like, grab the bass, the drummer. He was like, grab the bass, Bjorn. It's like, okay, no problem. I was like, it's just like a drummer playing somebody else's drum kit. Playing somebody else's bass can be a nightmare, not just because of the bass, but sometimes the tone that people have on their amplifiers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But this guy's tone was pretty good, and his bass was pretty good, and so it was okay, So we played the one of Yngwie's famous songs that I played when I was a kid, called "It Far Beyond the Sun," which is a pretty complex piece of music. Mm-hmm. So we played that, and we played about half of the song, and then Yngwie had some issues with his pedals or something like that, so we stopped. But it felt good, and it sounded good, and I came back the next day because I had another show in Southern California. And this was down the street from my house, and Yngwie was really friendly, and we talked and stuff like that. And a couple of years went by, and the drummer Patrick called me, and he said, "Listen, man, I got a show with Yngwie at the NAMM show in a couple of months. I wasn't even a couple of months; I think a couple of weeks." And he said, "We need a bass player. Can you do it?" I'm like, sure. And he said, well, we're not going to rehearse. We're going to send you the songs, and you learn the songs at home, and you just show up and play. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, I've done that before, not with Yngwie, but
right.
a million times with other bands. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And I kind of knew that what it's really all about is like doing your homework anyway. So I was like, well, okay, I'll do it. Sure, so that was my audition, and it was interesting because Yngwie was like, the day before was like, okay, let's meet and go through some of the stuff. And I think we met for 2 minutes. It was just kind of like, well, do you got any questions? I'm like, well, so how's this riff, on this one? Like, no, there's one note is off on that. And it's like, okay. And then it was like literally 2 minutes, and he said, okay, I got to go. I got an interview. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm like, okay, great.
I had 3 more questions.
Right.
Yeah.
We have 2 minutes to rehearse. Let's go.
Yeah. I was like, well, I'll do my best. It'll be fine, And then, it was like in a room upstairs in the Fender's booth, and they had, so there was only like a couple of hundred people in there. But what I didn't know was there was big screens outside, and the whole top floor was filled, and it was probably about 2,000 people watching the show. But that thing you just kind of have to block out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can play without rehearsal with Yngwie in front of 2,000 musicians, you can probably do anything. So that was
wow. Again, another baptism by fire.
Like, hey, would you like to tour with me? Or his manager asked him.
Wow.
So I kind of at that point I kind of knew that it went well and stuff like that. And I felt like it went well. So Uli John Roth is a friend of Yngwie's, and he was watching the show, and he was like, "Oh, I can't believe you did not miss one single note. How did you do that?" I'm like, I don't know. Now you have to play with me because I don't like to rehearse either. I'm like, okay.
Meanwhile, he's got like 40.
That happened, and I started playing with him a few years after that. So
wow, and he's got like 42 frets on his guitar or something crazy.
Yeah,
he's got.
Oh yeah, he totally. And he's got the Sky guitar, and then he has these tuners that tune themselves, and I think. He always forgets to tell his tech to change the battery, so it never works. So he's always on stage tuning anyway. But So it's great. But I remember like I was having dinner with Yngwie the night before I played this first show, and Uli showed up, and Uli came kind of late, so Uli didn't really stay to eat. He just kind of sat down for a little while. But before he sat down, he had his guitar with him, and he wanted to show Yngwie these tuners that tune themselves.
And the battery.
And Yngwie picked it up, and Yngwie was just kind of looking at it for like 20 seconds, and then he looked at Uli and he's going like, "Why? Why don't you just tune yourself?" That was classic. So, Uli's a really funny guy. So it was good moments.
He should have had some ridiculous answer like, "There's too many frets to tune myself."
Exactly.
And the thing about those frets, to talk about Uli's guitar real quick, is that they're not set like the scale keeps going up. He has it gets to a certain point, and then they're just spaced because he uses them for effects more than anything.
Yeah, not true notes or something.
Yeah. They're like kind of in between because you can't get your finger in between something like that.
I mean, if that high, you'd have to cut your pinky in half,
exactly.
widthwise, in order to fit it between the
so
frets.
He uses it as like this semitone that he can get out of the thing or whatever. Mm-hmm. So now working with Yngwie, I heard he can be quite difficult at sometimes. Did you experience that?
Well, I didn't. I mean, I heard stories before I joined, and I talked to my friend that was in the band, to Patrick, and so I knew what to expect, and and Yngwie stopped drinking like 2 years before I started working with him, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I'm sure that's a positive thing. Anybody who, I think most people, when they don't drink, are probably function better in many different ways. So, but it was strange with Yngwie too, because I grew up listening to him, and I was not when I was a kid, but later on, like in my 20s, I was like, I kind of had a feeling I'd play with him one day. I didn't know when. It wasn't not just I want to play with him. I was sort of like, I think I'll play with him, but I didn't quite know when. And I guess I'm a little intuitive sometimes, but I sort of had a feeling like, although all the stories I heard, I had a feeling I'd get along with him. I don't know why. I just kind of think, I was like, well, I think I'll get along with him. Because I think I kind of understood him, sort of like
you were another Swede.
He kind of was. And,
you were another Swede, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't even know if it's that, because I think he's not a typical Swede, and I don't think I'm a typical Swede, and he's definitely not. But so it was, and I kind of knew that it's his thing, and he's the boss, and I kind of knew better than to challenge him. Like, it's not going to go anywhere. Like, if to question a decision that he makes or something like that, it's not going to do any good. So I was like, well, I'm just going to go in and do a job and play, and that's it.
That's a good attitude.
So that's
absolutely,
that's what I did, and I never had a problem with him, and it's sort of like, if you respect him, he'll respect you, type of thing. So.
Awesome. It's funny. You can see every video that Yngwie has ever done on YouTube, and you can see like this arrogant side. But it was years ago.
Yeah,
right. Many, many years ago, and now you see his new videos. He not only is, of course, a virtuoso on the guitar. He has like perfect pitch, the whole bit, but he is funny as hell. I mean, he really is, and and just. They did like this tour of the studio. There must have been 40 Stratocasters literally just stacked on top of each other. No cases. Just all these guitars in this room. And he's like, he picks it up and he goes, this is a 73. And he just goes through and he has like, he just has this whole kind of like photographic inventory type thing. And he just talks about the guitar and he goes, 68, but it's completely different from the stuff that you used to see before.
That's good.
So,
that's great.
I mean, it's Yngwie, so who's going to really say anything about his guitar playing? First
Yeah.
off,
Well,
and second,
he's got a
you know,
good memory. I mean, because I remember the set list being like 27 songs, or to last tour I did with him, we played over 2 hours. I think we were over 30 songs or something like that. I mean, this is with solos and all this stuff included. But I mean, I remember every time we'd be on the bus or the dressing room going through the set list, you know, like me or Ripper or somebody would grab a piece of paper and Yngwie would say like, okay, let's make the set list. And he would just call out these songs like he's got like his whole catalog in his head,
Wow.
you know, and you know, of course we'd have to know like 50 songs and then he'd pick 26 of them. So it was a lot of work before going to Yngwie Malmsteen rehearsal, but you got to do your homework. But yeah, he's got a good memory and it's pretty incredible. And going back to the guitars, like, you know, he'd lean them up against each other against a wall, and it's like, it's exactly like that, though. This is a 72. Those kind of guitars people would have in cases tucked away in the closet, and they wouldn't even play them, you know. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean,
and he scallops them all.
Yeah, during this little video thing, one of them falls over. He's like, okay, no big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
I got two of those.
It's the kind of thing like if a guitar, I have basses too that have fallen over a million times, and it's kind of like, it's a little bit of a test too. If it's a good quality guitar, they should be able to take a little bit of a beating, you know.
Hey, the headstock didn't go snapping across the room.
I just had one of my LPs take a face dive this past summer in Ocean City.
Oh yeah,
somebody hit it, and it's like I didn't even want to look down.
Yeah, your heart kind of stops.
Didn't even want to look down, but I picked it up. And still played.
There you go, man.
Played it. I do have to replace the neck.
Nice.
It's a little crack.
Well, as long as you don't have a neck through, it's a lot of times it's not a problem, but
yeah, man.
But anyways, no, Yngwie's a funny guy. We had a lot of good laughs and a lot of good times. So, you know, he's got a good sense of humor. So
cool.
It's a lot of funny stuff would happen during rehearsal and sound checks and stuff like that, and it makes it easier. You know, you having fun hanging out with people is like the key element to having a good tour. You know, I think, because you're only 90 minutes on stage, well, plus 4 hours sound check with Yngwie in Yngwie's case, but
that's
but you're still 18 hours on the tour bus together, so you better get along with people, otherwise you're in trouble. So
wow,
yeah,
you know
but he was great. He was great. I only have good memories working with him, and I'm really glad. You know, I'm really happy that it ended on a good note and started on a good note. No pun intended, but yeah, it was really good times in my life. So
that's great to hear, man.
And that's led to like a ton of other people.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you played with Tony MacAlpine. You're now with Greg. These guys are not slouches when it comes to the fingerboard.
Yeah, and it's a nice thing, you know, and it's you know, and I kind of knew that going in, doing my very first gig with Yngwie. My attitude was like, okay, I'm gonna work my butt off learning these songs, because I know this is like, you know, investment in my career and my life. It's like, you know, people will judge you from that point on, you know. So, you know, you do a good job, and like in this case, I was, you know, Uli John Roth was watching the gig, and I ended up playing with him in 2010. And Mark Bowles was in the singer of the band, and he asked me, hey, I got this band with Virgil Donati and Tony MacAlpine. Well, we're looking for a bass player. Would you want to come down? And I said, sure. So I went down and I jammed with them, and nothing happened with that band at all. So, but on the way out to my car, Tony came running out and he said, hey, you got a business card? And then he called me, you know, 20 minutes later and asked me to be in his solo band.
Crap, man.
That's kind of like how that happened. So.
Yeah, and you know, that's a guy that we've talked to him. He knows. I mean, that's a musical genius too. You know, and I mean, you got to be on your game, man.
I mean, it's right place, right time, but you got to prove yourself.
Oh my God,
to get to those places at those times, you know, and then it's just about the networking, you know, but. Yeah, you got to put in the homework, man. You got to. I mean, like the whole thing with Yngwie, that had to feel like that early on. That had to feel like almost a once in a lifetime opportunity, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of things are. I always think people, if people are good and they're good people, they always get a second chance. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I think that those kind of moments sometimes will play a big role in what's going to happen next, and which direction you're going to go in your career and stuff like that. There's many different directions you can go, but yeah, of course that played a big role. It was a big deciding factor. And then the Mark Bowles, who was actually had the band that I played with in Uli's band, we became really good friends, and he became the singer in my band. So he's currently the singer in Soul Sign. So I mean, it just one thing led to a lot of different things, and it's kind of wild how when you think about it, sometimes how things happen, But
sure.
Well, as they say, action causes reaction. You make that one phone call and you get that one audition, and so many auditions I've done, and even the audition that Dave Bates did with my band, where nothing happened, it still led to something. So it was this audition with Tony's band was. I almost didn't go because Virgil had the song that he wanted me to learn, and the other guys, Mark and Tony, were like, well, we don't really want to play the song, but Virgil wants to play the song. And it was a crazy tune, and I was like, I didn't have patience with it, so I didn't quite learn it. I told Mark, like, I didn't quite learn the song, and I almost didn't go to the audition. And my girlfriend at the time was like, don't be a flake, you got to go. If you're a flake, none of these guys are ever going to call you again. And I was like, you're right.
Yeah.
So I went down, and then look what happened. So, and I've had actual auditions that I never went to, and I regretted it. And I'm not going to mention who they are because you're going to shoot me. But so
does it rhyme with let's see, cleave pie?
I don't even know.
I won't say. I won't tell. But yeah. There's at least one guitar player well known involved in both of those auditions that I did not go to. So yeah, so it just shows you, even if you feel like you're not ready, I think it's sometimes it's not about that. It's about showing up.
About showing up, exactly.
Yeah, and if you got a good vibe and you're a good player and you do your best and you get along with people, that's like 80% of it right there. So
for sure.
Yeah, we've had many of guys on here, and we've
said the same thing.
Exact same words. I mean,
don't be a dick
and don't crap on the bus.
Yeah, there you go. So, are you still doing Soul Sign and Plenty Heavy?
Well, Soul Sign we've been taking a break for a while. We've been really busy. Every single one of us, and two of the guys have been on the road constantly doing other things. So we've been on hiatus, and we have a lot of stuff recorded that we started recording that we need to finish up. So it'll happen, but that's been kind of on hold. So outside of Dio Disciples and Tony MacAlpine, I'm also working with Greg Mara in this new project called Plenty Heavy, which is his project, and we've been friends for a long time, and he's a great guy and a great friend. And I didn't see him for years, but we got back in touch and started working together again. It's a wonderful thing. He's a great guy and just a underrated guitar player, and he's a guy that deserves more success than he's had. So I hope something happens with this project now. It's pretty brand new. We got one single out, and we're working on the second one. And we actually yesterday shot a video and did the bass track for this next song coming up. So.
Saw that on Instagram.
Oh,
Gave
really?
that some love.
Yeah.
And
I like the first song.
Oh yeah.
I dig it.
And Greg has been on the show twice. He's just an awesome guy.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Every now and then I get a message or a text from him, and then it's like 2 hours later we're still going back and forth. So yeah, man,
that's awesome.
you got a good guy there, and jeez, man, I just that roster you've been with, dude, there's so many notes you've heard. Oh my God!
Right.
If you got paid by those notes, you'd be a rich man.
You got paid by listening. Wow.
Well, and it's funny because some people think that some people are loud that I've worked with, and I'm like, no, they're not loud, and even people think that Uli's loud. I'm like, no, you don't know what loud is. if you haven't played with Yngwie, you don't know what loud is.
You mean the wall of Marshalls?
And he was even comfortable because his tone is really comfortably loud. And I'm stuck between. I have my bass rig, and one of his cabinets behind me. I have a keyboard player on one side and a drummer, one of the loudest drummers in the world, on the other side.
Wow.
So I was like, after that, I was like, I have to have some hearing damage. And I mean, years ago, I wouldn't, like, my girlfriend at the time, we'd sit and order at a restaurant, and I would answer the waitress something that she never said, and she would start laughing, and she'd go like, I can't believe you said that. That's not what she asked you. And she's got, you got to go get and test your hearing. And I was like, no, I think I have earwax. And I think I did, because about a year and a half ago, I had my friend's wife works with she does all the hearing aid for people. So she's testing people's hearing all day. Mm-hmm. So she said, I'm going to test your hearing. And it was 100% on both ears. And I couldn't believe it. I was like,
wow.
I played for over 30 years, and I was in the Englen Malmsteen's band for 5 years. I almost asked her, can you do that again? Because I don't think your machine is correct.
Right. Wow.
But
Good on you, man. Wow.
Pretty incredible.
I mean, it was at 230 decibels, but you passed it.
Right. Probably, yeah. Yeah.
You heard it at a level that would make anyone else deaf, but you heard it.
Exactly, I heard it. At least I'm not completely deaf.
They have the Yngwie setting on the hearing machine. See, that's what they do. They test. Well, okay.
It's funny, exactly, because my friend actually lives in South Florida, so it's very possible. So that's where I did the testing. Was not too far from Mingvei's house.
It's called weighted. The test is weighted. Real quick? What's your rig like nowadays?
Yeah, man.
Well, I'm still playing the EBS amps and different variations of that. They have a new head out called the Raidmar, which is a lightweight head. 750 watts. It's got a built-in compression and overdrive, just like all the other heads, and just amazing. Just a tone that comes out of that, and the volume is unbelievable. So one of my favorite new heads. I still work with all the other heads, and they're really easy to dial in, and you get a really good, like, neutral, natural frequency response when you plug into those. So still working with that, and playing Ibanez basses now. So I've been doing that for a while, and the Talman series 4-strings, and I got a BTB 5-string that I just got like the day before I started the recent Tony MacAlpine tour, and people would come up to me afterwards and say, oh my God, that 5-string sounds unbelievable. So part of it was probably the amp and the way I play and the way I dialed it in, but I agree. It does have a really good tone, and I played some good 5-strings before, but this one is pretty incredible. So
nice.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That is
any pedals involved, or are you just straight in?
I've been using, and this is not because I'm endorsed by them, because I've tried all sorts of pedals, but I always been blown away of the quality and of the EBS pedals. So I'm working with those. I've been using the compressor and the overdrive forever, and that's a lot of times when I do sessions, that's all I do is plug in through those two straight into the board. Oh, and nice. The compressor is sort of like pretty amazing, because you can hear the compression. Even if you turn it all the way up, you don't hear the compression. It's very discreet. So and if you turn it off, it's like, oh no, what happened? So you get addicted to it. So it's like, yeah.
And don't they make Billy Sheehan's pedal?
They do,
yes.
Yeah. I've been working with that too a little bit, and then that's a really good pedal. So, and it has a lot of controls, and you sort of have to know how to dial it. But if you leave everything at 12 o'clock, I did that a couple of times, plug it into other rigs in rehearsal situations and stuff like that. And it's a really good pedal, just even using like that as a preamp, and you get a little bit of overdrive and a really cool tone out of it. So
Nice.
So I got a Billy Sheehan story.
Okay.
Hey, we're talking to a bass player, and everybody knows Billy, right? So
Yes.
Billy's back in it's the first Mr. Big album, and it has Addicted to That Rush and all that. I forget. Is there a name to that thing? I think it's just Mr.
Big, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, they're playing Hammerjacks, which was a local club here, big venue years ago.
Yeah.
And he had this rig. Because, see, Billy used to, he runs, if you look at his guitar, he's got two output
It's at
jacks.
least biamped, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So one goes to the neck pickup and the other one goes to the bridge pickup, and he actually blends them with the volumes, right? Well, one is distorted and the other one is clean. Right? And he does this blend, and he used to use Pierce amps, and then he used to go out. It was the most elaborate bass rig you could ever imagine. And I remember on that tour, he had this device. I've never heard of it after this. I've read about it. He got it late with Roth when he was still playing with Roth before he joined Mr. Big, and it was a motor that would throw this signal down like 50 hertz. And it was like it was some type of air projection, and it would just push this thing out. And I remember that thing was so brutal. It was unbelievable. And then he had like, he had like the 15s, and then he had the 10s. I mean, it was like this whole biamp thing, but it had these.
But it was like a speaker motor, because the moving part of a speaker is also considered a motor.
Yes, but it had something that pushed the air out. It wasn't even like a cloth cone or anything. And I just remember like going, that thing will make you not feel good.
Right.
Like it gets way down there,
I'll make you pee.
And then when all this stuff started happening, when with fly dates and stuff like that, it would just come back in my brain, like, what is he doing? Like, what is he doing?
Right.
Because he's got to be losing his mind because he has this.
Because he can't get what he used to have,
So now his rig is very small. Is he using EBS? I think it's primarily
it's in his rig, actually, and it's on when he plays, I mean, he's still...
I thought
it's
his
still
amps,
not a simple rig, but it's nothing like the old days.
No,
but
no, they did a rig rundown with Winery Dogs, and it is like night and day. He used to have like 2 of those 21U racks, for his rig, and I couldn't even imagine what that signal path looked like back in those days.
Yeah, if you got one little cable that's doing something weird, you got to troubleshoot that. Then that's a nightmare right there. But especially if when you're shipping your stuff overseas and then you get the gear and you go to the first sound check, I don't know that I could just see. Yeah, exactly. But back a long time ago, there was really not much like fly dates. It was like you'd ship the gear over, 2 weeks before, and then you go to a different continent and play and do a whole bus tour over there. But the days have changed, so he's still with a lot of that. And I think he has his different configurations of things that he fly with, anywhere from like 3 pedals to some small systems and stuff like that. But you have to get to the point where things have to become practical, so.
For sure.
He had like Moog pedals and all kinds of stuff, man. It was crazy. It's so amazing that you go from that to other guys that are like, just plug straight in.
Absolutely. Yeah, you get a lot of guys that always just plug straight in. I think like Geezer Butler, I don't think his rig is too complicated, for example. So I mean, you get everybody's different, but Billy he's heavily into the equipment, the components, and he knows a lot about it too. So,
Yeah, I saw Geezer recently when I saw Black Sabbath.
Tour,
and
well,
he's a unique player for sure.
Yeah. Well, Bjorn doesn't have to worry about refrigerator racks full of gear. It's guitar, maybe a pedal, and then go.
Exactly.
Come on, let's get it.
It was the funniest thing because I even remember this for 30, 40 years, more than that. People were always like, how does Geezer get his tone on the first Black Sabbath record? And then people have been buying gear for thousands of dollars trying to mimic his tone. Then there was an article in Bass Player magazine, I think 2 years ago or something like that, and they asked him, so how did you get that tone? And he was just like, well, this is speaker in the studio, and we had no money, and we were from working class, part of England, and we went into the studio with no budget, and I just plugged into what they had in the studio, and there was a little amp with a cracked speaker, and that's how I got that tone. And I was just like laughing because how many people reading that wouldn't just be like, oh my God, that's how he got that tone.
Yeah, and those two things at the end of his arms.
Those two.
Exactly. That's what people tend to forget. You get two different people playing the same instrument, and it's just. And people have been saying this about Eddie Van Halen's amp settings. People have tried his settings and played, and they said it sounds like crap when people try to play using his settings. But then there was one example of him going into like a music store and plugging into different amps, and it didn't matter. It sounded exactly the same every time. Yeah. So there you have it. And I think any player like that, they're going to sound like they sound. Whether it's Van Halen or Steve Vai or Yngwie, and those are some of the most unique players. But I think any player that knows what he's doing and has developed sort of his own style and has a good control of the instrument, it's going to be in your hands. If your hands aren't working, nothing's going to work anyway. So
it's in the digits, man. It's in the digits.
Absolutely.
So where are you doing any kind of touring with any one of the bands? Where can our listeners see your digits next?
Yes.
Good question. I have one show on the January 15th with Tony MacAlpine in Mexico City. And then we're looking at doing a couple of shows in California right after that. And then the year is open. He wants to book some more stuff and kind of make up for some of the lost dates that we had a couple of years ago, or about a year ago when he got sick. So he's doing a lot better. So
good.
We're going to get back into it and do that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I can't wait to do that. It's always a lot of fun playing with him, and he's just a great friend and a great guy to get along with outside of the stage as well. So it's great.
Awesome.
And
nice.
Dio Disciples is looking at doing festivals next summer and doing the Dio hologram and stuff like that. So we're looking forward to doing that.
Wow.
Exactly when that would be, I'm not sure, but sometime in the summer months is the idea. And we're looking at doing some Soul Sign shows as well. So
wow, man, you're like busy.
Yeah.
Good.
The 90s might have sucked, but the 2000s are working their ass off for you.
There you go.
Oh my God, I tell people all the time, it's like, back in the day when you can be in one band, those days are over. It's like now that nobody's selling any recorded music, or at least you don't get paid even if you sell it. Mm-hmm. Those days are over. So you got to be on the road, and each band you have to be in about 3 bands and and juggle. But it's fun at the same time. But it kind of kills the focus a little bit. Especially if you have your own project going that sort of needs a lot of attention. That usually is what suffers. Unfortunately, like in my case. So.
Yeah. Well, get out there, get the Plenty Heavy stuff, and Soul Sign, and just man, check it out.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we'll keep looking if any one of those entities happens to reach the northeast part of the country.
We will be there.
We'll come out and say hi. And
do you have a
website?
I'm sorry.
Do you have a website that we can put out there for people to go to?
Yes, I do. BjornEnglen.com. I put all my show dates and events and everything on there.
Oh, good.
And then soulsign.us.
Okay.
And then all the social media. I'm on the Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and same thing with the Soul Sign. It's not on Instagram, but Twitter and Facebook. And Dio Disciples has a Facebook. So TonyMacAlpine.com, plentyofheavy.com, and
it's easier if we just say don't go to Dragon Force or Dream Theater. Everything else in between, just go to it. You'll find Bjorn there.
There you go. He'll be the bass player. Wow, that's awesome.
But
man.
look, I'm going to have all those links if I can remember them all.
Right. We'll figure it out.
I'll have all of them up on the show, and that'll live in
perpetuity.
That's right. When it goes to the archive, and if you go to ampsandaccesscast.com, you'll be able to link out there, check out his stuff, and
Sure.
you guys, you should.
Keep an eye out, man. That's got to be one of the hardest working bass players in rock and roll
I'm
today.
telling you what,
wow.
man.
Yeah, it's been good times, and it's I think living. I try to live in the now and look into the future. It's sometimes it's good to look back, but sometimes it's not necessarily a good thing either. You got to kind of keep moving and keep pushing and enjoy every day, and
absolutely
work as hard as you can.
Absolutely, man.
Without killing yourself and without killing your passion. I think that's the key. If there's any musicians listening, I think keep the passion going. Don't kill the passion, because that's not a good thing. So.
Well, we can guarantee all musicians are listening.
Exactly. Exactly. Words of wisdom, man. Words of wisdom.
Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, Bjorn, thank you very much for taking the time. And
my pleasure.
Much continued success in every project. And we'll keep an eye out. And you know what? I wish you much passion.
Thank you so much, and the same to you guys. And it's been a blast.
Thank you very much, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I'll be in contact. I'll be in contact with you, brother.
Okay. Sounds good, man. And happy holidays and all that.
Yeah, very good. Happy holidays. Have a great rest of the evening, and we'll be in contact.
You too.
For sure,
Sounds
man.
good.
Take care. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
And there you have the story, or the many stories.
Oh, whew.
Wow.
Tell you what, man.
You know what? You want to work? Be a bass player.
Jesus.
Be a bass player. I've said it more than once.
Be a bass player, learn all the parts, and I guarantee you won't sit down.
No. You'll be able to sit in, but you won't be able to sit down.
I mean, just real quick, because, we ran a little bit, but that guy's played with freaking legends, man.
Absolutely.
I mean,
luminaries.
Yngwie Malmsteen is Yngwie Malmsteen, but let me tell you something. You can work with that cat. You're set. Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously he's gotten to be a very cool guy to work with, but working with him is one thing. But if you can hang with him, there you go.
And what a sweetheart,
musically,
huh?
Yeah, totally awesome.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
I hope Greg can get that thing over here. It'd be awesome to hang with those cats.
Oh, for sure.
See them play and all.
Yeah, it'd be great, man. It'd be great.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So until next time, my friend.
Of course, we'll find another bass player.
That's right. I'm Mick Marcelino.
And I'm Jeff Bober.
And we're always saying,
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @AmpsandAxes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaccesscast.com. Thanks for listening.